Fish. One of those things.
Lizards, reptiles, snakes. I heard the answer multiple times. Lizard, reptiles, snakes.
Probably chicken.
There is a chance, maybe, if my snake decides to shed, and if Mr. Fisher proves it,
I'll be back
that I could break. Okay.
I'm gonna go Dollar General.
You're gonna bring your snake.
If Mr. Fisher proves it, and
if you better.
it decides to shed,
No.
then maybe I could bring it.
No.
It is the bestest snake ever. She's the superest, sweetest, wonderfulest snake. But it's got to shed first, and she has to, she has to get approval from Fisher. So, oh, I would. She's amazing.
Sorry, but I'm telling Fisher to not approve.
Well, she has to shed first. We're not doing anything if she won't shed.
I don't care. Even if she should.
So, she's amazing. So anyway, new unit on reptiles. We are moving right along. We've got to cover reptiles, birds, and mammals before the end of the school year. Hopefully we won't run out of time. I took my earth space class outside today, and I was listening to bird calls, and I heard a western chorus frog, and I heard a meadowlark, which is a type of bird, and an eastern phoebe, another type of bird, and red-winged blackbird, and blue jay, and robin. So the birds are definitely coming back. So when we get to our bird unit, there will be all kinds of birds for us to hear and learn about.
How's my test looking?
I haven't graded them yet.
Gosh,
Probably won't grade them till this weekend.
gosh dang it.
Well, NHS induction ceremony is next week, and I've got to get programs printed, and I've got to get certificates printed, and I have to do a walkthrough, and then Top Dog is tonight, and I was in charge of that, so I had to go pick up a cake last night and buy a bunch of stuff for that. It's been a little busy. NHS is taking up a lot of time, so I will get your stuff graded this weekend, and we only have a 2-day weekend this weekend. Hi. I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Me and my sister were walking to Dollar General, and
We do have school on Monday, next Monday.
I was telling her to listen to the sound. She's like, "Is that a bird?" I'm like, "No, that's a spring peeper."
Look at you, you're so good.
I know.
I've trained you well. Trained my students well.
I'm like a dog.
All right, so herpetology. Herpetology was a class I had in college. It was a semester class. Herpetology is the study of reptiles, but they group amphibians with it too. So herpetology is reptiles and amphibians together, the combination of the two. If you're a herpetologist, then you study reptiles and amphibians. It's a really fun, it was an interesting class. By the time I got into these advanced classes in college, herpetology, mammalogy, ornithology, they were quite challenging, honestly, because not only did I have to identify all of the reptiles and amphibians in Missouri, I had to learn their scientific names and their common names, and I had to know their ranges, and I had to know their breeding seasons, and I had to know, like, my professor was mean. He put a species on there that I had, like, a morphed, like, one that was mutated that we'd never seen before. And that was on the test. And so that was just mean.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I used to know all the Missouri species. Now I'm a little out of practice because I lived in Kansas for 13 years. But I'm getting better at identifying the Missouri ones again. And that is why I'm making you guys learn a lot of the Missouri, like the frog calls, for instance. Because that is part of zoology. So when I went to college and I had classes in all of this, I'm sharing that knowledge with you guys. So we are on to, and we have come so far. Look at all the stuff you guys have learned. Brilliant students. We have gone through all these phylums, and now we're in the classes. We've gone through Agnatha, Gnathostoma, Chondrichthyes, Osteichthyes, and we've gone through Amphibia, and now we are on Reptilia. Yeah, and we've only got avies and mammals left, so we are on the home stretch. We will not dissect a reptile, but we do have a bird and a mammal that we will dissect for the two after this. We will probably still do a dissection prep just so we can keep up with the internal structures, but we don't actually have a reptile to dissect, unfortunately. And no, we're not dissecting Liz. So here are the orders of reptiles. We've got testudines, rhinocephalia, squamata, and crocodilia. So testudines are turtles and tortoises. Rhinocephalia are these things called tuataras. Yeah. They are super weird. They are very primitive. They look like these little tiny dinosaurs, but they have not changed in years and years and years. But yes, they are super weird looking little dinosaur things, and they're only found in one place. I think it's New Guinea, maybe. And then we have squamata, which are snakes and lizards. Those two are grouped in the same order. And then crocodilia, those of course are crocodiles, alligators, and caimans. Caiman looks like a little alligator. They just don't get quite as big. So, characteristics of reptiles. They have scales on their skin. That is the main characteristic. We are lucky to have two types of reptiles in the classroom. We have our wonderful Liz, and we also have our Yamori, the gecko. And even though they are both types of lizards, their scales are very different. I'm sure most of you by this point have held Yamori. Yamori is very soft. He does have scales, and just a few weeks ago he was shedding, and they are very soft feeling scales, whereas Liz has very rough feeling scales. Any type of reptile must shed their skin, and as I've mentioned several times, one of my snakes at home, because now I have two snakes, one of them is not shedding very well, so I'm doing everything I can to try and help it shed. They are fully adapted to live on land. This is the first species, aside from arthropods, that is fully adapted to live on land. We've got the shells that allow them, shells of eggs that allow them to do this. With the amphibian eggs, they have like a jelly-like egg without a very good shell. And because of that, their shell did not, it needed water. So they could not lay their eggs on land very well because their eggs would dry out. But now with reptiles, they have a leathery shell, and this leathery shell is going to allow them to live on land better and not lose moisture very much. They're still oftentimes going to lay their eggs underground where moisture can be retained pretty well, but they can lay eggs in the desert. There's in fact many desert types of reptiles, and they can survive well away from water. Their eggs are also something called amniotic, which means that they have an attachment and a yolk, which allows them to gain nutrients from that yolk so that they can survive and grow within the egg. They're mostly going to be carnivores. There are a few that eat plants. Liz, for instance, is an omnivore, and actually Yamori is an omnivore too. Yamori gets like this, it's kind of a mixture food that looks almost like baby food because he eats like nectar and plants, fruits and things like that. But Liz will eat vegetables and fruits as well. Yes?
Can I step out on the longer local?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for asking. But Liz and Yamori both do like insects as well. But if you think of a lot of the other reptiles, snakes and things, they will mostly be predators and carnivores. Typically no vocal cords. They don't make a lot of noise. However, if they are scared or startled, they sometimes make a yelping noise as a way to alert you that they're scared. Shedding is a big deal for them, and some of them will eat their shed. This is common in lizards like Yamori, for instance, the gecko. They eat their sheds. It does have nutrition to them, so sometimes they will eat their shed as a way to just gain more nutrition. The snakes, however, typically don't eat their sheds, and they need rough substances in their enclosure or in their habitat to rub against. Typically the nose head area will break first, and then they will crawl out of it and leave behind the shed that is turned inside out. So this one is just starting to shed, and if it is a good shed, then it's shed all in one piece. Liz, you can't jump there, Liz. And it's turned all in one piece, and they have the new scales underneath.
I had an old advisory teacher at my other school. She had a giant, I mean giant snake shed. It was all in one piece and it was so good. I was so proud of it.
At the zoo, we had very large snakes. In fact, one of the largest snakes we called Big Mama. She weighed close to 50 pounds. Yeah, she was massive. She was she was just a python. And she was getting to the point where she was too heavy for me to handle. And she would occasionally have some really good sheds, and we would try and laminate them. And one of them was about the size of this table. But then another thing we had at the zoo, we had a partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they would confiscate things from people trying to smuggle things into the country. And when people tried to smuggle,
drugs?
well, more think like animal products that they're not supposed to have.
Drugs.
That animal products that they're not supposed to have.
Catnip and
Ivory and
Oh yeah.
and one of the things we had from them was a snake skin that was tanned, and it stretched from about where I am to the front table.
oh no.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it was lovely.
Nope.
And so we would take it to programs, and it was all rolled up, and then we'd just stretch it out on the floor for the students to see.
What kind of snake was it?
Reticulated python, I think. And we'd stretch it out so the students could see how long it is, and we just like unroll it. We'd like bloop out, and it would roll across the room, and the students would love it.
I watched this TV show, and they catch Burmese pythons.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was a Burmese python. I don't know.
I would never do that.
It was pretty.
Things- No.
Yeah. Well, we had quite a few things from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we actually we took our volunteers on trips every year. And we took them, I think I mentioned this, we took them to what's called a repository in Denver. And it was the place that they kept all of the confiscated goods. And it was this huge warehouse. And so you walk into this huge warehouse, and it was floor to ceiling shelves of all of and it was really sad, but it was really fascinating at the same time. Like, it was all categorized. There was one shelf that was turtle shells, and so floor to ceiling of turtle shells that people had tried to steal, and some of it was made into ashtrays, some of it was just polished, some of it was made into jewelry, like bracelets and things. It should be open.
They're trying to be an entrepreneur. You just
And some of it was, I know. Are you trying to log pile out? Is that what we're doing? Some of it was, people had taken like crocodile skin boots, and they covered it with leather. So they had the boot, and then they'd had it peeled back to show where the crocodile skin had been covered by regular leather, because they'd been trying to sneak it in.
That's valid.
Yeah, so all the different ways they tried to sneak in things that they weren't supposed to. So it was really interesting.
I can see you standing.
But that's mean.
He's just standing there.
That's mean. Guys.
mean.
He's not.
Don't let him back in here.
He's a nicer student than some of
You
you
need to put him
guys.
back. No, why'd you let him in here?
I
Stranger
was
danger.
here serving a goldfish. Neither one
I
of y'all
don't
here.
want goldfish.
What do you mean I didn't do nothing to you guys?
Hi. All right. Anyways. This is the breakdown of how they're kind of separated. We've got our vertebrate group, then we have tetrapods. As we learned in our Kahoot, tetrapod means four-legged animals. Amniots. Amniots are those that have a yolk sac that helps them to develop away from water and onto land. The cynopods are the ones that are more advanced, like the mammals, and then we got the diaspids, which are the a little bit slower and not quite as advanced ones. So here's an amniotic egg, which has that yolk sac, which shows the development. Here's a little lizard in there, and it's got that yolk that it's going to feed on while it's developing. We actually have a yolk sac.
I eat eggs.
For those
That's
chickens?
basically what we eat. The yellow part of an egg is the yolk.
No,
Yeah.
I had chickens in my incubator at home. We got 3 of them.
Aw. But we have a yolk sac as well until the placenta develops in humans and takes over for us.
Oh, you called me 8 minutes ago? That's no.
So reptiles are going to typically hibernate during the wintertime. They will go underground and sleep, and their body temperatures will go way down until springtime when the weather warms up. We are going to start seeing more and more animals start to wake up, especially now that the temperature is starting to get more stable and not as cold. We're not going to say that we are completely over with winter yet, but it is definitely getting warmer out, and the weather is starting to get more spring-like, so more and more animals are going to start to come out of hibernation. Aestivate is kind of the opposite of hibernate. We've mentioned this before as well. This is where if the weather gets too hot, sometimes animals can't tolerate that, so they will go to sleep during hot conditions. So basically the opposite of hibernate. Hibernate's for cold, aestivate is for hot. Some reptiles can change color, not nearly as good as we saw in the cuttlefish and the octopus. They can change a little bit. We've seen Liz change color a little bit from like dark brown to light yellow. And we've seen the gecko change color a little bit too. But the chameleon, a lot of people think that they can change really well. Bless you. But it's not really as extreme as we saw in the cuttlefish and the octopus. They're really the best. Many reptiles are extinct. The dinosaurs, for instance, are a good example of that. But there are a lot that are still alive. We keep finding fossils, though, of the reptiles that are extinct. They had a good run a long time ago. Not as many are as alive now as there used to be. Some, like the geckos, can lose their tail. This is called autonomy, and they can regrow them back. However, Yamori, he can lose his tail, but he would not grow them back, so not all of them do. Leopard geckos would grow their tail back. Geckos especially are the ones that are best at doing this, but not all of the geckos would grow their tail back. Obviously, Yamori has not lost his tail yet, and hopefully we can keep it that way. Here's an example of color change. A lot of them will do this to regulate body temperature. The dark color is going to absorb sunlight more to keep them warm. The light color is going to not absorb as much sunlight in order to keep them not as warm. They do have a 3-chambered heart. The exception for this is alligators and crocodiles. The alligators and crocodiles have a 4-chambered heart. They are showing the more advanced characteristics, and it is believed that alligators and crocodiles are more closely related to birds. So that is where the birds came from, as the alligators and crocodiles had a ancestor that was similar to birds, because they show a lot of the same characteristics, including having a nest and taking care of young, just like birds do. So only a 4-chambered heart in the Crocodilia group. All the rest have 3 chambers like amphibians. They do breathe through lungs, breathe through lungs, not their skin, and so they are going to have much more advanced lungs. And they are also ectothermic, which we learned about with amphibians also. They're going to regulate their temperature by basking in the sun, hiding underground, or being nocturnal in deserts, because the reptiles do thrive in desert areas. Liz, for instance, is a desert species.
Liz?
Liz is a desert species.
What happens if we just throw it in the water? Do you think Liz can swim?
Probably not very good.
We should try it.
You should try.
We'll put it in the sink. We'll put it in the sink.
Liz is not a good swimmer. And some of them will change colors. Some of them might pant a little bit as a way to cool themselves down too. They're going to excrete uric acid from the cloaca. They don't typically urinate.
Don't urinate?
Not usually. The uric acid is that white in their feces. Like when a bird poops on the windshield, it's white. That is uric acid, and you see that a lot in reptiles too. Here are pictures of what the heart looks like in the frog, the 3-chambered heart, 2 atriums and a ventricle. Here is reptiles. They're starting to get that division of the ventricles, but it's still considered a 3-chambered heart. And in humans and more advanced animals, specifically birds have a 4-chambered, mammals have a 4-chambered, and crocodiles and alligators have a 4-chambered heart. That's the most advanced. It's to keep the oxygen blood and the deoxygen blood completely separate. There's no mixing. There's these terms called oviparous and ovoviviparous and viviparous. Oviparous is egg laying. So we see this in reptiles. There are a few that are viviparous, but not many. Most are ovoviviparous or oviparous. Ovoviviparous is a little bit different. This means that they lay eggs, but the eggs hatch inside of them.
That's weird.
It is weird.
That's like some sharks, I think. Right?
Sharks are ovoviviparous too. That's true. So a good example are boa constrictors. Boa constrictors will lay the eggs, but the eggs are inside, and then the eggs hatch inside. And so when the eggs hatch inside, it looks like the babies are hatching inside of them. And they're giving birth to live babies, but they're really not. It's just the babies hatched inside.
Some snakes get egg barren.
They do, just like chickens do. Yeah. Very little parental care. Occasionally they'll take care of their young, but most of the time they lay their eggs and then they go away. Sometimes though, you might watch, my daughter loves a movie called Snake Discovery, but sometimes you could watch some of these snake videos and you might see the mother snake protecting the eggs. So sometimes there's parental care. There is very good parental care in the American crocodile. They will gently carry their babies in their mouth from place to place.
It's so cute.
It is so cute. They take care of their baby crocodiles. This is another interesting thing. The temperature of the eggs can determine the sex of the offspring. It's not like in humans where there's an X and a Y chromosome. In the reptiles, it's whether it's hot or cold. So what do you think global warming will do about that?
A lot more eggs hatching. There's gonna be a different species because it's warm.
It's going to impact it. It's going to change whether they're male or female. So if things are getting warmer, it's going to skew that. It's supposed to be 50-50. And typically the organism laying it, so like a lot of times sea turtles, for instance, this affects sea turtles. Sea turtles could choose whether they have more boys or girls. And they could, well, males or females, they could bury the eggs at different depths. And if it was deeper, it would be warmer. And so they could have more of a certain males or females. And closer to the surface, it would be cooler, so they could have more males or females. And now it doesn't matter as much because the surface is hot too. And so the depth doesn't matter. They're getting, I believe, here, the cooler temperature was male and the hotter temperature was female. But now it's all hot, so they're getting all these females. And global warming is meaning that more and more females are being born and less males. So the population is skewed toward females now, and it can't be balanced anymore. So more of one is being born than the other.
Wait, what? There's more females being born than males.
Because it's getting hotter.
Taking over.
Oh my god.
Because of global warming.
Fourth grade.
Of course, when something happens to the world, then
There are something called a cloaca. The cloaca is the general opening or the common opening. They don't have, well, they do have reproductive organs. A snake actually has what's called hemipenes, which is a forked reproductive organ in the males.
Throw that stuff away. We don't need that.
But a common reproductive opening is where they go to the bathroom and they reproduce all through the same opening. Cloaca is pretty common in many types of animals. Frogs have cloacas too. Birds have a cloaca. And reptiles also have a cloaca. So cloaca is pretty common in many types of animals. All right, that's all the notes we're taking today. The assignment that you guys are getting today, we're going to be working on tomorrow as well, since a lot of you will be gone for the ACT. So just be aware that tomorrow will be a work day to work on the assignment that you're also getting today.